This lesson is Unit 8, Section 2, the beginning of the Progressive Era. The Progressive Era's goal was to reform or change America. The problem was the Gilded Age, or the last 30 years of the 19th century. Because of the growth of the upper class, when 3% of the population was controlling 90% of the nation's wealth, this rich upper class was influencing our government, oftentimes in a corrupt way, and government had become more and more corrupt. Graft was prevalent throughout government. And so one of the goals of the Progressive Era was to change this. The people most affected by this graft and corruption was common Americans. So social reforms were a very important goal of the Progressive Era. Leading the charge during the Progressive Era against the ills of society was a group of investigative writers and journalists who attempted to uncover this graft and corruption. These investigative writers were known as muckrakers, and the name comes from the idea that, like muck at the bottom of a pond is stirred up by, let's say, like a catfish, waves its tail back and forth and stirs up the muck, the slime at the bottom of the pond. This is what this is referring to, that they're going after the innermost, darkest areas of graft and corruption between big business and government and expose these things. One example of a muckraker during this time period was this sweet-looking lady named Ida Tarbell. Don't let her sweet looks fool you. She was a very tough lady. She goes after, in a magazine called McClure's Magazine, she goes after Standard Oil Company and the largest of the robber barons, John D. Rockefeller. What was wrong with what Rockefeller was doing? He had become so rich and so influential over our government that he got added benefits that other Americans did not enjoy, and oftentimes at the expense of common workers within his industry. And so she exposed these things in her newspaper and really brought public will to bear against John D. Rockefeller. A second muckraker during this time period was Upton Sinclair. Upton Sinclair's original purpose was to go into the meatpacking industries and expose how these big businesses, these robber barons, were harming their workers, not taking care of their workers. But when he got into the meatpacking industries, he discovered the terrible conditions inside the meatpacking industry. Rats crawling across meat that laid on the floor, rat poison pulled out to kill the rats and left on the meat, cockroaches, splinters, spoiled meat, and the government was not there to ensure the safe food supply. So in a book called The Jungle, Upton Sinclair demanded federal oversight or regulation of the meatpacking industry. So these are two examples of muckrakers during the Progressive Era, and this concludes the lesson on Unit 8, Section 2, Social Reforms.